Welcome to the Pacenotes, a podcast about all things Porsche. Today, we're talking about the history and the evolution of the Porsche 911 Turbo. Greg, what topics are we going to go through today?
We're going to go everything from the introduction all the way up to the last of the air-cooleds, the 993 turbos.
Nice.
When I think of, and what most people had up on their walls as a kid, posters, you think of the 911 turbo. The 930 is one of the most iconic variants of the 911.
Big whale tail, the hips.
Right.
And people who don't really know the old cars, a lot of them will even recognize a 930 turbo just because of the weight, the width of the car,
Right.
the tail on the back,
That T-tree
the bulkiness of it. It is just a cool look. So we're going to dive into the beginning of the turbo, which was in 73, 74 production.
Yeah, they had the prototype at the Frankfurt Auto Show, and really the Porsche engineers, they'd been developing and using turbos and competition Porsches for a while there. So, Chairman Ernst Fuhren
Ernst Fuhren?
Damn it.
Ernst Ferdinand?
Furman, I forgot an
Ernst
M in there.
Ferdinand? Ernst Ferdinand.
So yeah, the Porsche engineers had a lot of experience with turbochargers in race applications, and so at that point, Chairman Ernst Fuhrman, God damn it! All right, we're not.
You said it right then.
We're not going to use the name anymore. The chairman at the time thought it was possible to use turbos on the production cars, so they did prototypes in '73 at the Frankfurt Auto Show and '74 at the Paris Auto Show.
So the first turbo that Porsche made was a 2.7 turbo, correct?
Yeah.
And that was for Louise Piche, who was the daughter of Ferdinand Porsche, correct?
Right.
And she married into Volkswagen, and it was basically a gift from Porsche to her.
Exactly. It was on her birthday.
And they even specified it to her likings, which was like the clear glass, no tinted, so that she could paint in her car.
Untinted windows. She would go haul ass through the Alps, and then go out and just sit on a mountain somewhere and paint inside of her car.
Well, who doesn't do that? That's a normal thing, and
That's what we
that's
usually
why
buy Porsches.
it's usually why people don't want their windows tinted, also.
Right.
But yeah, so that was the very first 911 turbo that involved
Right.
930, and she didn't want the turbo badge on it. And so that was just kind of a one-off thing that they did. It was a silver car, had like the red interior.
Yeah.
I think it did have the plaid inserts, which is cool. It's one of my favorite cars. I think it's a really, really cool car, and had kind of cool history behind it.
And that's up at the museum now, right?
I think so. Yeah, and but so that led into the very first 930, which was a 75 930 to 911 turbo.
Right.
Which was only available in Europe at the time. And that was a 3.0, a 3-liter engine with 260 horsepower.
Okay.
And honestly, at the time, it was just this is a 77 turbo behind us, but it looked very similar to this that was the first tail the first whale tail or whatever you call that, T-tray that came out. And it just kind of, a lot of people today are kind of disappointed with the car because of the way it runs. I love them. I think it just gives it a cool personality. I think it makes it collectible.
It was the first turbo car that came in, right? I mean, it was pretty off the wall. I mean, super wide hips for the time. Again, the first force-induced motor that came into the States, and first obviously from Porsche, and
didn't stay for too long.
Not too long. People got into trouble with it, right? I mean. You knew it was a turbo because of the badge, but you didn't have a boost gauge. At the time, you didn't have an intercooler until 78.
Well, you step on the gas and you're just like, where the heck is this car going to go? And then you stomp on it and hold it there, and finally it kicks in. Like, you could see where people could get themselves in trouble with it if you don't know how to drive them. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of people would step on the gas and just hold it there because it wasn't going anywhere. And finally the turbo would kick in and it would just spin out.
Tons of turbo lag. Being rear-wheel drive with a lot of power, and then oversteer on top of that, and people would find themselves boosted into a tree. Got named coined the Widowmaker.
Yes, and that's in the 77, 76 cars, which is what we got in the States. So 76 was the first year to the States, And, I think I like them better than the 3.3 cars, the 78 and up, just because they have more personality.
Sure.
I think they got a raspy sound to them. And even between 76 and 77, they had some differences in the car. 76 had the 15-inch wheels,
Right.
which I think is a really cool look for these cars.
Oh, yeah.
And then in 77, they went to the 16s, which is kind of the turbo wheels that everyone knows on the 930s. Both of them had the what do they call that tail? The T-tray?
That would be the whale tail. T-trays, later on, that's when the sides started to flare up.
Okay, so they had the whale tail, which I prefer over the big T-tray. I think
Right.
that's just too bulky. And then the 76 didn't have the center console. It had, and just a few other little quirks that.
Yeah, you didn't get your infamous 930 brakes, those calipers, until 78. So the early ones had the S calipers, and you definitely noticed.
I was talking to a guy the other day I was at the car show, and he had a 77 turbo, and he bought it brand new, and he loved the car. It was, I guess, one of the metallic brown colors with brown interior, and I think like green carpet or something weird like that. But
70s.
he said the one thing he couldn't stand on it were the brakes, just because, and it is a common thing, because the thing will take off, and then you go to stop, and you got to make sure you're stopping within.
Yeah, you had a lot of brake fade, and those brakes couldn't keep up.
So, but they're really cool cars. I like them a lot. A few modifications make them really nice cars. One of the big things, like on this one, this is a 77 turbo. It has a K26 turbo on it. The K27 turbo is a big upgrade for these cars. We just put one in another 76 turbo. And these things are dogs with the K26 in them. But with the K27, it's actually a really fun and enjoyable car to drive.
Right.
So with that, maybe a few suspension upgrades, and you got yourself a really nice car, and a very unique car, which is pretty
Absolutely.
cool.
Yeah, you only had that spoiler for a couple of years before they went to that larger T-tray. They had two grills, and then in 78 they went with the single larger grill to accommodate the intercooler. A couple other things were upgraded. You got those brake calipers that are derived from the 917 race cars, which were great. Single alloy calipers, two piston. But that's things started to die off 78, 79 from
Because of the Widowmaker.
because it was all the lawsuits from fatal accidents. At one point, they're actually having to provide training and instruction on these cars because of the fact that.
And I always thought that basically America said that we're not taking these cars anymore. Really, it was Porsche, because everyone kept complaining about these, and America started complaining about these cars and saying they weren't, good cars because they were uncontrollable.
Right.
And Porsche basically got sick of America, say, hey, if you guys can't handle it, then you're not going to get them.
Right.
And actually, one of the last cases was, I think, here in San Diego, which was like a doctor and his assistant. And I guess they were driving home, and he had too many drinks, so he had her drive, and she didn't know how to control it. And went off the road, and I think they both died in that accident.
Yeah, there's a lot of fatalities with these, and it was just inexperienced drivers, driving a.
Mark said he worked on one of the cars that happened in. One of the car, he was the main guy working on that car.
Or if you're in the area at that time.
So.
And combined with, there was also a second energy crunch that was happening in the late 70s, early 80s. So, it was more of a PR response from Porsche. Like, we're going to take our time on this. The people loved it, the market loved it, but, Department of Transportation and.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, so the turbos came back to these states in '86.
Right.
And most people prefer 78, 79.
And you see a lot of those.
Over the 86. And yeah, they had more stuff in the 86 cars, but I prefer the 78, 79 cars.
Absolutely.
I think they're just more fun to drive. And they're just, they're very similar cars. But to me, I think looks wise and some of the, the classiness of the earlier cars I like a lot.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, in 86, they really didn't change too much. They had the dash, bigger AC vents.
Right. Later on, you got the upgraded transmission, so went to a G50 in the very last year, in 89. Also didn't mention that we went from a 3-liter turbo to a 3.3 in that last revision, and I believe it's
I
78.
still like the 3 liter.
Yeah.
I think it's a fun engine. But yeah, and that's basically the 930, and then they went.
Yeah.
to
Well,
the-
you saw, going back to that period of time where the U.S. didn't get those turbos, you started to see, you still see them pop in, and they call them gray market cars, right? So it's so there's some gray market import processes where people were bringing in, 83s and 84s, and you'll see them kind of specially tagged, and there's kind of a fan following with those as well.
We had one. We had an 80. We had two actually. We had an 81 that was a really nice car, and then we had an 85 that was 10,000 original miles. It was a really nice car, and they're cool cars. And they had the updated. So those ones had the Carrera style seats, and nice cars.
And still on with the 930s, they've always up until 86, they were welded on flares.
Yep.
So it was kind of an afterthought. And in 86, that's when they started actually including the flares into the stamping process. So, not a lot of people know that. So they'll go in and they'll feel, that
Feel a
seam on a
mark.
flare, and they're like, well, this wasn't, this has been modified. But prior to 86, that's just how it was.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty unique that they waited that long to actually make it a stamping.
Yeah.
But
And you also saw in the early 80s, right? It's hard to talk about 80s turbos and not talk about the slant nose.
that's a love-hate thing. A lot of people, I think they're, at first I loved those cars. I thought, well, the coupes I liked. The cabs I'm not a huge fan of.
Or Targas.
Well, the Targas were only a handful.
Yeah.
We saw one once, and it was like all original paint. It was a nice car. I had like 100,000 miles on it though, and it was just like I didn't believe it was original because I was like,
turbo
they
Targa
didn't
slant
make a
nose.
turbo Targa slant nose.
Who would
I
do
think
that?
there was like 40 or 37 or something of them.
Yeah.
And it's a super unique car, but
Very select market.
very select.
Yeah.
I wouldn't choose it. But
Yeah, I mean, was it like 80% of the slant noses out there are
fake.
reproductions or fake? It was based off the 935 race car, and
it's got the inlets on the side.
the inlets. The earliest ones actually had the headlights in the front spoiler, and then later ones after that then had the pop-up lights. But it was a performance upgrade because you also got an additional oil cooler in the front too. But growing up as a kid, I always had it was the classic white slant nose poster, and it was
You're like,
just,
that's
it looked
the coolest
cool.
car ever.
But then, and even from the front, it looks great. But then, look at the side, and it just
Well, and the funny
why
thing also,
why does it do that?
the way they put them together wasn't ever right. You look at them and it's like one of the ways to identify a real one is they're usually not perfect.
Yeah.
Some of the aftermarket ones, the ones that are done after the fact, are the nicer
Yeah.
looking cars.
Well, that's the odd part. Is they started off, they were being built by the Zuffenhausen repair department.
Really.
Yeah, so they'd get Rec 930 turbos, and it wasn't an official option, so they were just kind of
Having fun with it.
And I think they only made like 236, or
I
around
think
there.
that might have been per year. I don't, because I think I read that, and I think like they didn't make many. I know that.
Yeah.
Coupes they made the most.
Yeah,
And actually cabs and Targas. Targas were very rare.
yeah,
And then cabs were even pretty rare.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think they're a unique car, and they're definitely, they look like the 935s. They look, I think that's what people
Right.
love about them. And I think they're a cool car, but they just,
They have a unique look.
they have their own, unique look. But anyways, you can't not think about the slant
Yeah,
nose. And a lot of people who don't know Porsches even know what the slant nose
Sure.
looks like. So, but yeah, anyways, moving on to the 964 turbo.
Right.
Which 964 is one of the 911s that you don't really talk about too much. It's a great car, and they're very popular right now. But for only having those cars from 90s, well, the turbo's 91,
Yeah.
but 89 to 94, there was actually a few different kind of turbos that came out.
Right.
You had the first generation, which was basically it was a 930 engine with the 5-speed.
Right. They took a C2 body and widened it.
And then, it was basically a 930. And then you had the 3.6.
Mm-hmm.
But then also with those, a lot of people don't hear about are the S and the S2.
Right. Yeah. The Turbo S came out in '92, or at least it was the prototype was shown in Geneva in '92, and really unique car, right? I mean, they obviously had an engine tune. It was right around 381 horsepower. but lightweight. That's what this car was about. And considering it was early '90s, they had carbon fiber panels, so they had door, engine lid, hood. They had extra inlets in the wheel arches, which look awesome.
Did all the S's have those? Mm-hmm. And then you had the flat bows.
The flat bow,
which is like a slant nose turbo.
Yeah, well, basically it's the distinction between the flat nose, not to be confused with the slant nose.
Yeah.
And
kind of cool looking. I mean, again, it's unique, but that one's so rare that you got to kind of admire it because it's just you don't see it.
There's
how many were made?
I mean, Turbo S's, 964 Turbo S's, they only had like 80 or so, and then even rarer than that was the Turbo S2, which is one of those homologation specials where IMSA required you to make 200 road cars, and then 20 of those had to be to the spec of the actual production race car. And so they made these modified Turbo S's, which they called S2s, which was race prep, suspension, and actually they sent them to Andal for that K27 turbocharger that you're talking about. Larger intercooler, tweaked cam profiles, and then ported and polished heads. But this, it was kind of unique in the fact that all the cars came from Zuffenhausen, and all they had was like a little certificate or a letter in the glove box, and no other indicators. So I think like half or so of the dealers took the 2 from a 928 and put it next to the S. So if you ever see it, so half of them are badged, half are not. And so a long time, you couldn't actually identify without looking in the engine bay and seeing some of the nuances, whether it was an S2 or not. And it's just a really unique aspect in Porsche history where, you get these race cars that have to be made for the road.
Yeah.
And if you got an S2 these days, you've got a unicorn because that's so
if you
rare.
know you have it.
If you know you have it, yeah.
So in '93, they came out with a 3.6 turbo,
Yeah.
and for the 964 body style, which is basically cars looked the same. I think they had different wheels. They had the Speedline style wheels.
Different
on them.
wheels. You could, there's obviously displacement bumped up from 3.3 to 3.6. They also did a Turbo S variant, pretty limited. I mean, the 3.6s are already rare.
They're pretty rare
expensive.
cars, right? They're only a couple, maybe like 200-300.
Turbo S's, there's like 93. So
Really?
yeah, I mean, 964 turbo prices are pretty high, but the 3.6s are they're up there.
And that basically evolved into the 993 turbo, which was 3.6, and they had all the goodies the 993 had, and those
Right.
were
And
pretty
more.
awesome cars.
Yeah, it came out in '96. They're making over 400 horsepower at that point, and they're all-wheel drive at that point too. What's interesting about the 993 and just in general.
So the 3.6 964 turbo was not. It was not all-wheel drive for sure.
Correct.
That's pretty crazy though to think that was their first all-wheel drive turbo. Was a, I guess that was pretty new with the all-wheel drive
The
cars.
C4s and the 964 was kind of their first
They
dip
didn't
into
have
it.
the best.
No, it
all-wheel
was
drive
a
cars.
pretty clunky system, and once
is
it was
why-
refined,
Which is why all the C2s go for more
Yeah.
than the C4s in the 964 era. So by the end of the 964 era, it sounded like they had gotten basic control of that all-wheel system, so they put it on their turbo, which
right.
really the 993 turbo is a very, very nice car, very comfortable to drive in.
So yeah, the whole styling was just a little more understated. People were in that time kind of focusing more on the luxury aspects, and they were just raw power. The flares were more integrated with the fenders. The wing was less pronounced.
And Porsche, I know throughout the years with the Carrera, I mean, I know when the 80s Carreras came out, they did that, and they didn't. The reason those cars, a lot of people say the Carrera and the SC were kind of can be boring cars to drive because, that's what the States wanted. The States wanted cars that, the doctor could drive every day. And
Right.
I think it's the same thing with the 993 Turbo. It's a very evolved car, very comfortable, also very fast, had all the goodies that all these people wanted.
Right.
And, it is a really, really nice car. So, I think that's what Porsche was after, was making a car.
Catering towards the audience, and those are the people that were buying the cars at the time.
And they made the Turbo S as well.
Right.
And that was basically had the inlets, and I don't know how much more.
Yeah, I mean,
horsepower.
it got another engine bump, bigger brakes. You had air ducts for the front brakes.
But those are very rare cars, and very, price-wise, they're out of this world.
Yeah, not a lot of 993 turbos right now, Turbo S's.
And then the 993s in general are just desirable cars. The 964 and the 993s, and I think that's because of the comfortability of them.
Right.
You know, you drive a Carrera. The difference between a Carrera, an 80s Carrera, and a 964 is the comfortable. It's a lot more comfortable than the 80s car, and even the same thing with the 993s. The 993s are very comfortable cars.
Well, yeah, like you saw in the 964, that's when you started getting ABS and power steering and all these, systems that we have in place today that are more refined, which is why a lot of tuners are, backdating 964s because you get all those features in a car that looks older. But 993, they're refined even further, so it's a very, like I said, it's a very smooth ride, and you see a lot of.
It was a smooth transition from the 993 to the 996, the water-cooled cars. It was, they kind of drive similar, even though they're completely different cars.
Right.
They drive, they're very comfortable cars to drive.
Yeah, you found their electrical systems there's a lot of changes between 964 and 993, which then led into the 996s. So they got a lot more complicated in that
We
aspect.
won't talk about the 996.
Now we stick with air cooled.
They're cool cars, but
The cool thing is that we're on the 993 turbos, and at least they're standard on the turbos and optional on the rest of the models with the turbo twist, the technology wheels.
the hollow spoke wheels.
Hollow spoke, you got like a 20% weight savings on them. Lots of knockoffs. I bet you half of the technology wheels that are out there are fake. But now we look at them and they just look like a standard 90s wheel. But they're great.
Tom, he'll get upset when people take the turbo twists off the turbos and put different wheels on them because he said they're just such great wheels.
Yeah.
They are really nice, and so, but it's pretty cool to see when those wheels in the cars. They're very nice. So the history throughout the 911, you can see that it evolved to kind of what we have today. I mean, we didn't talk about the water cooleds, but even leading up to 993s, you could see it just evolving into what they are today. Very comfortable, but also very fast cars.
And kind of learning through mistakes as well. You start out with the early cars that again didn't have boost gauges, that didn't have intercoolers, which is asinine to think about today, not having something that's going to cool your turbo.
We had someone who came in who didn't know turbos, and he knew turbos, but he didn't know 930s. And he was asked, he saw it in 76, 930, and he goes, "Where the heck is the intercooler?" Like, no, they didn't have intercoolers for 76, 77. And he was shocked.
Yeah.
It's like, how are these things on the road?
Yeah, you sit at a stoplight, and in air cooled in general, you're going to be running hot, but with a turbo, things get a little hot.
And so through that, I mean, from no intercooler to the 993, where it was just all the comfort stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty cool evolution of cars. And
Absolutely.
So it's a great history of Porsches, and it's different because a lot of people don't know too much about the turbos, but they are awesome cars and they're fun and they're their own kind of character.
Right. And all the iterations and all the race development that went into these cars. And all just the quirky models that came out in between between flat noses and slant noses and S2s. I mean, there's just all sorts of sneaky little models in there that people don't know about.
Yeah. So, the history of these cars is pretty awesome to learn about. So we hope you guys like this episode on the history of the turbos. If you guys have any questions, feel free to call us, leave a comment below. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.